Today's scripture is from Isaiah chapter 58, verse 11. Isaiah 58:11. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your soul in drought and strengthen your bones. You shall be like a watered garden and like a spring of water whose waters do not fail.
Good morning again. Well, I'm curious, how many of you knew my mother, Esther? Did you know my mother, Esther? Wonderful. She is Uncle Addison's oldest sister, and my cousin Esther, who taught the Sabbath school lesson, is my mother's younger sister, Jessamine's daughter. So for those of you who weren't here when I was little, it's an honor to be with you. I remember when I was 5 years old, at the home place which now belongs to my Uncle Addison, I was standing about where his house stands now. At that time it was Grandpa's garden. And I was just looking around and thinking about my life and wondering about my future. Don't tell me children don't think about the future. I was thinking, I wonder where I'll end up in life. And I remember looking at that little house and I thought, well, that's where my mother was born. And that's where my grandfather was born. That is the house that my great-grandfather built with lumber from Illinois that he brought on the Union Pacific Railroad, which is who he bought the piece of property from, and walked up there and dug a hole because he didn't have a house to sleep in the first night, so he slept in the hole that later became the basement. That's my fourth generation understanding of it. Uncle Addison could probably fill you in on more details, but I was thinking, okay, based on that background, probably I will never leave Nebraska. Little did I know that God would take me halfway around the world to reach out to unreached refugees in war-torn areas of Southeast Asia. Little did I dream either that he would bring me back to reach more refugees who spoke the languages I had learned there and coordinate refugee ministries across North America. I never dreamed of such a thing. But God equips us for what He calls us to do. Amen? Let's bow our heads for God's special presence. Dear Father in heaven, I pray that you'll give us a glimpse of your wonderful strategic plan and how we fit into that today. Thank you. We love you so much. In Jesus' name, amen. I want to let you know I'm going to do a little introduction. Bill and I will switch back and forth, and we'll have some little surprises in the middle. I'm calling this miracle territory. Ever since I stepped into reaching cross-culturally, it has been miracle territory. But this text, okay, sorry for the title on that. This text means more to me. Thank you, Jeffrey. This is my oldest son, my only son, and And I should introduce you to, next to him is my daughter, Kayla. So Jeffrey and Kayla, our middle daughter, Janessa, is in school, so she couldn't be here with us. But my husband is here, and he'll be included in the music a little later. This text means more to me the older I get. Teach us to number our days that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. How many of you can say amen to that? Life is short, shorter than it seems. And we want to be successful. And I'm so glad that God's messenger spelled out what success is. Success in any line demands a definite aim. He who would achieve true success in life must keep steadily in view the aim worthy of his endeavor. And it goes on to spell that out. The heaven-appointed purpose of giving the gospel to the world in this generation is the noblest that can appeal to any human being. It opens a field of effort to everyone whose heart Christ has touched. Has Christ touched your heart? Amen. So giving the gospel to the world has a place for you. We know this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. I didn't study Greek. I don't know if some of you may have, but I learned recently that the word that's translated nations is actually the Greek word ethnos. What does that remind you of? Ethnic groups. So that the intent of Jesus in telling us this was that the gospel of the kingdom would be preached for witness unto every people group. God's not interested in political boundaries, amen? He's interested in people and people groups. And that's what he was talking about when he said that the gospel will be preached as a witness unto all ethnos, and then shall the end come. Keep that in mind. What will it take to finish the work? If the gospel will go to every ethnic group before Jesus comes, what will it take? Here's a glimpse into God's strategic plan that I had no idea growing up. The divine plan that God had in mind. And I'm thankful that we're members of a church that has this as the mission statement: to proclaim to all peoples the everlasting gospel in the context of the three angels' messages. And we're going to move right along. In a nutshell, the gospel is to go to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. In project planning class in college, if there's one thing they drilled into our minds is that a goal isn't even a goal without identifiable objectives, quantifiable outcomes, and a time frame. And our time frame is given to us plain and clear, right? What is our time frame? This generation. The gospel is to go to the world in this generation. So I thought, well, where are we in the process? So I did a little research, and I found out that our church has a presence in 215 of the 236 nations and areas recognized by the United Nations. Wow, that's quite a record, isn't it? So I went on to kindred. I wonder how many kindred we have reached so far. Believe it or not, I could find no research on how many kindred have been reached and how many are still unreached. And I think I know why, because to us as Westerners, it doesn't mean as much as to some cultures. I didn't realize the depth of meaning until I met my husband, and he began telling me, and I began learning the language and observing the Hmong culture. The Hmong are an Asian language group from, there are 12 million in the world, 9 million in China. there are about 300,000 Hmong in the United States, primarily California, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and North Carolina. And when they meet on the street or in the grocery line, over there or here, their first question is not, "Oh, what's your name? Where do you work? Where do you go to school?" The first question is, "Which Hmong are you?" In other words, which kindred are you? And that determines everything. It determines what we call each other. It determines how we relate to each other, whether our children can marry each other or not, all kinds of things. But even though in Western research, I am not aware of any data on kindred, I find it interesting that God felt it was important enough to put it right there in the core of our mission statement. Well, what about tongues? And I found there is extensive research on how many languages have been reached. If you'd like more information, just look up, Google the Joshua Project. Amazing. I discovered that there are still more than 7,000 unreached ethnos, or language groups, people groups in the world. Well, my next question is, how many people does that represent? And when I first launched this ministry in 2009, there were 2.9 billion people. But now, just 8 years later, those 7,000 unreached language groups add up to 3.14 billion. Wow. So, on the surface, it looks like we've reached quite a few, but when we look deeper, there are still quite a few who are unreached. So, what would it take then? How many unreached people would every Seventh-day Adventist in the world need to reach to get the gospel to the world in this generation? Any mathematicians here? Every Seventh-day Adventist needs to reach 157 unreached people. Now, this is not our relatives that haven't decided to be Adventists yet. These are people from cultures, from languages we don't speak. Every Seventh-day Adventist in the world would have to reach 157 unreached people groups. That's cross-cultural, cross-linguistic ministry to get the gospel to the world in this generation. Last year, our membership grew by 1 million. Amen? But the world's population grew by 82 million. 8 years ago, it was growing at a rate of 75 million, but I had to update my slide. Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Every soul is precious in God's sight. And as we know, as well known to Jesus as if it were the only one for whom Christ died. In a refugee camp in Thailand, a young man said, "Can I tell you my story? I love stories." And I said, "Please do." And he said, "I was 10 when communism came into my country, and the communist soldiers came and captured my parents. They had good jobs in the capital city, and they were among the first to be captured when the country fell to communism." And he started thinking, wow, I'm the head of the household now. I need to take care of my little sister, who was only 7 at the time. So he decided to raise fish in the bathtub and sell them at the market to support his sister. It was a heroic attempt, but he soon realized he couldn't make enough to support his little sister that way. Tried everything he could and finally realized, I'm going to have to flee across the border to the refugee camp. Found someone to get him across the Mekong River. 7 years had gone by when he told me the story, and he said, Every time new refugees come from Laos, I ask them if they've seen my parents or heard anything of them. Never have I heard a word about my parents. I don't know if they are dead or alive. I don't know if I will ever see them again. But I'm so glad that communism came into my country. My mouth must have dropped open. How could you be glad when you lose your parents and everything you've known? And he said, because if communists had not come into my country, I would never have learned about God. That's how much it means to people who've never heard the message of salvation that we've come to know and love and sometimes take for granted. But each soul, there are 3.14 billion. That's more than 40% of the world's population that wouldn't even know how to find out about Jesus and the story of salvation, even if they had some reason to want to. Where are they? Most of them are in the 1040 window. There are, and I discovered this, if you could boil the world's population down to, if you could boil the world's population down to a community of 100 people, there would be 5 North Americans, 9 Latin Americans, 11 Europeans, 15 Africans, and 60 Asians. Well, and many Africans already know the gospel. Right now we have whole groups of refugees coming from the Congo and from Rwanda who are already Adventists. But Asians have the most language groups and the most numbers of people who are completely unreached by the gospel. So I'm thankful that my brother and his family are reaching out to some of those very least reached language groups. And so I'm going to ask my brother Bill to share with you some of their experience. And then I'll wrap up. While he's switching, I'll tell you another quick story. I had the privilege of translating a sermon for a Lao pastor who had been in prison for 7 months for asking a member of his to bring Bibles into the country. He had just asked a member to bring 2 or 3 Bibles back. Well, she had a missionary spirit and she brought 200 Bibles back. And when the officials at the airport opened her luggage, they said, "What's this?" And she said, "Oh, my pastor asked me to bring some Bibles back." Your pastor? Who is your pastor? Call your pastor up and tell him to come in here. When he arrived, they promptly arrested him and put him in prison. And to give you a little idea of what prison is like in that country, if you're put in prison, you likely will not come out alive. This was illustrated by the fact that a refugee from that country in Sacramento took a shower the way they usually do over there, modestly, with a loin, well, more than a loincloth. It's a wrap. They know how to take very modest showers outside because they have to bathe in the river. Well, evidently, the apartment was, maybe the restroom in the apartment was busy, so we just, I'll just get my shower outside. The neighbors weren't used to that, and they called the police, and the police took him in on a claim of indecent exposure. Well, he had no idea that probably he'd be released the next day. He thought it was like prison in his home country, and he figured he didn't want to spend the rest of his life there, and he committed suicide that night. So that gives you a little idea of how hopeless a prison sentence can be in that country. Thankfully, there were many brothers and sisters praying for the pastor who was put in prison, and after 7 months he was released. But this gives you a little idea. And when I translated for his sermon, he said, I'm here to tell you that Jesus is not coming for a long, long time. It's amazing what can go through your mind in a split second. I looked at him and I thought, aren't we supposed to be preaching the soon coming of Jesus? And how Adventist is this man? And next, can I even conscientiously translate this? But I've been trained as a professional interpreter, so I decided, okay, you're not to add your own opinions. So I just translated what he said, and he went on to give the text. This gospel of the kingdom shall go to all the world for a witness unto all language groups. And then shall the end come. And he said, in my country, at that time, he said there are 68 language groups. And the gospel has only begun to go to 2 of these in 2 cities. I'm thankful that my brother and his family are there now sharing the gospel, and Bill will tell you more.
Good morning and happy Sabbath.
Good morning.
Happy Sabbath. Stays connected here. It was 1989, and my sister twisted my arm to help her set up a mission school for Southeast Asians in California. Well, that was a little answer. I didn't realize it, I didn't think about it, but that was an answer to one of my prayers. I had prayed, Lord, I know how to be enthusiastic and share how great you are to those who know you, but I don't know how to share how wonderful you are to those who don't know you. Please teach me. God answers these prayers, doesn't he? And so I went to help my sister, and a few months later they said, hey, the team said, hey, there's these 5 boys, I think you should study with them. Well, God had been impressing upon me that I should study with them. And pretty soon, though, the Bible study with those 5 boys, I was teaching them English with the Bible in Sacramento, California, and pretty soon they had a friend. Oh, my friend wants to go, but he was across town. And brought him a couple times. I switched. I said, okay, let me just study in your home. Then one of them moved. Pretty soon I had 5 to 7 Bible studies a week with 5 to 25 children in each of those. They were all Buddhist children. Well, some of the kids and some of the parents said, they called me Mr. Bill. Mr. Bill, you've got to go to my country and teach our people about God. And I said, well, if God opens the way, I will go. In my heart, I was thinking, I'm a full-time volunteer. I have no money. It's a closed country. How will I go? But I will go if God opens the way. A few years later, I met my wife-to-be, and we applied with Adventist Frontier Missions, and we applied to go to Thailand. They asked, why do you want to go to Thailand in our interview, acceptance interview? And I had to tell the truth. So, well, actually, I'll be happy to go to Thailand, but that's not where I want to go. I want to go to Laos. We want to go to Laos. They deliberated, they had a long meeting, and they called us back in. They said, you are accepted to go to Laos. Now, As you hear me speak, sometimes I will say Laos and sometimes I will say Lao, because in the Lao language there is no sound at the end of a word. So Laos is an international term. Lao, the people of Lao, the country of Lao, is the local term. So I've been there now, our family's been there now 14 years. So often I will just say Lao, okay? So here we are about 8 years ago. And this is our family, okay? Now you don't see everybody in this picture here, do you? But we have a couple of foster daughters. We call, in Lao they have a special term. I just love this term because it's Lukhat. Maybe that doesn't sound so wonderful to you, okay? But Lukhat means child by love. So we have 3 extra there. Those are children by love, and they have all been in our homes. I'm not going to tell you the stories of all of them. If you want to hear all the stories, then let me know, and maybe this afternoon or something I can tell you the other stories. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about Crystal and another person that's not in this picture. Moving. There we go. Okay. There's a more modern picture. Our kids are grown up. You have to have a modern picture, right? Well, if you don't know where Laos is, it's surrounded, it's land linked. It's not touching the ocean. It's land linked to Vietnam, China, Myanmar, Thailand, and Cambodia. And the Mekong River separates a major portion of it from Thailand. And we live where this lower circle is, right here. Now you notice on the side there it says people groups, that there's different people use different terminologies to indicate how many people groups there are in Laos. The government says there's 3 people groups: lowland, midland, and highland. But in reality, there are 132 different people groups according to current statistics, and only, 112 of those, that would be 84.8%, are unreached. Only 20 groups have people, enough people in that group to say that people group is reached. So 80%, more than 80% of the people groups in Laos do not know and maybe haven't even heard the name Jesus Christ. As it says there, it's a communist country. It's closed to open evangelism. And so we have to have creative ways to be there. This is our English school. It provides we planted there, provides our visas, and it gives us opportunities to meet people. It's a center of influence, a COI. And we can build relationships with students, build trust, and then we can share the gospel. We have students from several countries that actually come to our school. We have a Mongolian here, and then we have a number of high school and college students. We have a businessman, and we have a monk. all in this class. Now, they say there's around 1,000 Adventists in Laos. Most of those are among the Hill tribe. Actually, most are among the Hmong people. And what we went there to do was to reach the Buddhist. I mean, we'll talk with anybody that's interested. Okay? But our main purpose was to reach the Lao Buddhist. And this is a challenge. Even though the church has many members, most are not Lao, did not come from growing up as a Lao Buddhist or a Lao folk religion animist. And so what I want to share with you today is as a direct result of our school and the teachers that teach at our school. We have had in the past 4 years, we have had 7 people give their life to Christ. There's 2 baptisms, here they are, they're friends. These young people I knew, they weren't my students. This one was one of my students. And the next picture, this was also one of my students. She was baptized just a few weeks ago. She sent me these pictures. Does she look like a happy young lady? Now there were 6 baptisms, but one other person. This is an amputee due to cancer of the knee. She was studying law, an exceptionally bright young lady. She came down with cancer, and our church, our teachers became aware of her, and we began to help her with natural remedies, and she made progress later. They tested her, there was no trace of cancer. She got a prosthesis. She stayed in our home for about a month and then went back to her village up north. But last December, she came down with some congestion. Doctor said, "That's just a cold." Gave some medicine. A couple months later, there were some spots in the lungs. And when they checked again, the left side was full of cancer and had metastasized into the right lung. She passed away since we came on furlough, but she gave her life to Christ. Amen. And actually, there's other people that were baptized too, but these are a direct result of being students and friends with teachers at the school. Now, my children are taking on the mission. My daughter and my children, they plan events to help the deaf children. And so they learn a different form of sign language to work with them. And so they're coloring pictures of creation. The first full story I want to share with you is about a young man, Nate. Now this story, and it's been 4 years since we've been on furlough, and this story started 5 years ago, but we didn't know it. God has little surprises for us. we went on furlough, we came back, and my nephew, Jeffrey, came with us. We wanted him to see some of the sites. We went to one of the national monuments, the Victory Monument, and while we were there, there was a young man, a monk or a novice, and he kept looking at my wife and my children, especially my wife. My wife came up and said, "This monk, he keeps looking at me." But I think maybe I recognize him. And so she, but about that moment, he came over and says, "Jude, how do you remember me?" ก็เขียนภาษาจีนนำครอบครัวเจ้า I studied Chinese with your family. Well, the summer before we went on furlough, my wife and the kids went and studied Chinese to do something different with some other Adventist friends. And in that class was this young man, a young novice. Well, we exchanged contact information. Pretty soon he was calling me up and he said, "Can I call you Daddy?" And there's this high school student about to graduate. Can I call you Daddy? I said, "Yeah, sure." And then he went to he was about to graduate, but he said, "Can I come to your house?" And I invited him. I said, "Sure, you can come to my house." But I planned for somebody to be there at the same time, a young pastor who had just graduated from the Philippines. And he was that young pastor who had been sponsored by a former Adventist Frontiers missionary. And so he came, the two of them. I went and picked him up on the motorbike from the temple, brought him to our house, and they talked. He told some of the struggles in the temple, how it was very hierarchical, and the higher monks would lord it over the lower monks. And pastor friend said, "You can leave the temple. Just seek walk night. You can leave the temple." A few months later, one of the times when he called, he said, "I'm going to graduate next week. The following week, I'm going to go through the ceremony to leave the temple. Can you come pick me up?" Now, he didn't say, "Can you come pick me up and take me to visit my friend? Or take me to the bus station or the airport?" He said, "Can you come pick me up?" What do you think that meant? "Can you come pick me up? Can I go stay at your house?" So I went and picked him up. And he stayed with us in the house. He was very industrious. He'd wash dishes and sweep the floor, sweep the sidewalk, and dig the compost pit. But the third morning, the third day, I had just gotten up from breakfast. He was standing washing the dishes, and he turned around and he said, "Oh, ศาสนาคริสต์กับศาสนาพุทธแตกต่างกันหลาย" He said, "Buddhism and Christianity is so very different." Now, this is not what you usually hear from a Buddhist. They say, "Oh, all religions, oh, you're a Christian, very good. I'm a Buddhist, all religions are good." All religions teach you to be good. Therefore, all religions are good, right? And you might think, oh, they're open to learning, but no, it means your religion's good for you. All religions are a teaching. All religions teach you to be good. Yours is good for you. Mine is good for me. I don't need to change you. You don't need to change me. We'll just be happy and be friends. So for him to say Buddhism and Christianity are so very different was very monumental. And it's because he was in our home. If we had just been studying the Bible, and he would come and study the Bible and go home, or we'd gone to him and studied the Bible, and I go home, he would not have seen. He said, in Buddhism they teach but don't do. In Christianity they teach and do. He saw us as vegetarian. He said, oh, in Buddhism they say don't kill, but they kill and they eat meat. But in Christianity they say don't kill and they don't kill. And of course there's a whole bunch of other meanings, connotations that go with that. But he said, in Buddhism only the highest monks try to follow all the rules. But in Christianity everybody does. Down to the children. You see, it's not Christianity, true Christianity, is not just following a bunch of rules. It's not just a teaching. It's Jesus Christ in us. Amen. It is He who lives in us to will and to do of His good pleasure. He transforms us from the inside out. He said, I'll take in Ezekiel 11 and 36, chapter 11 and chapter 36, it says, I will take your stony heart, your heart of stone, your hard heart, and I will give you a heart of flesh. Christianity, true Christianity, I might say true Adventism, too, is all about a relationship with Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ, who lives in us to will and to do His good pleasure. We sponsored Nick to study in Cambodia a couple of years. He came back inspired. He wanted to go home. Well, he wanted to study overseas, but sponsorship didn't come through just right on time. But that was part of God's plan. He wanted to go home and try a few things, but he also wanted to reach his family for Jesus Christ. He wanted to build an adobe home to show his family, his friends, his neighbors how to make a house that would not be too expensive, would last a long time. And so he did. He's almost finished with that home. And he would come and visit us. He also planted a big garden. And he would sell the produce. People would say, well, he told me, he says, people used to tell me, you're going to change things. You're going to be the person who will make a difference. You're different than your dad. Now they say, you're different than your family. You're different than your dad. You're a person that changes things. He sent us 2 big boxes of produce from his garden that filled our kitchen table. He grew string beans, and they go the squeak, squeak, you know that? You like the squeak, squeak of string beans? Well, his neighbors didn't like that squeak, squeak, so he sent them to us. And we enjoyed them thoroughly. But God made him like a planted garden in a wilderness there in his neighborhood. A couple of weeks before coming on furlough, he called me up. He said, Daddy, you have some time? Yeah, I have time. What do you need? He says, well, I had the opportunity to share about Christ with my family. And you know my younger sister. She stayed with you a few days. She's interested in, of course she wants to be a Christian. But now my mom is interested in becoming a Christian. And my two older sisters, well, they're interested, but they're scared because they've heard all kinds of rumors of what Christians do. They like putting spells on you and forcing you to become a Christian and on and on. But they're interested. But my dad, I don't know. A week later, he called me up. He says, my dad won't let me use the tractor anymore because I'm sharing about Jesus Christ with my family. God is working with him, with his family. So I ask that you pray for him. You know, this young man here is one of his friends. Together they were in the temple, and they tell me that they found a Bible in the temple. And so they had a race to see who could read it, who could finish it first. Well, of course they didn't understand everything. Many things they didn't understand, but it was an introduction. God was calling them. This young man, his friend, is studying to be an attorney. And he comes to me with questions that no other loud person asks. Questions about the Pope. Question about, is the government above the church? Is the church above the government? And questions about history. And I come to him with questions about justice. And I show him stories in the Bible. And he says, that's just what I was studying this week. It happens every time. God is good. Here he is now. Jesus in his heart makes him a new person. And he's becoming a church planter in his community. We all know that if the world, what Jesus said, if the world hates you, you should realize that it hated me before you. If you belong to the world will love its own. But because you do not belong to the world, and I have chosen you out of the world hates you. Remember what I told you. A servant is not greater than his master. Are we greater than our master? Should we expect a better life than our master? But often we do. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you. But if they keep my word, they will also keep yours. Now at this time, I want to invite my family, but I think not just my family, my nephew as well, and my brother-in-law, up to do special music. I'll introduce them. I'll introduce the family to you, and they're going to do a little medley.
So the song that we're going to be singing is in the Lao language, the two songs. And the first song is called Sivit Hao Patao Song Sang. And what that means is that God created us and that we can't do anything good on our own. And that we, through Jesus Christ, His sacrifice, that we can be saved. And then the next song is Jomawon Atitan. It's based on the scripture that says, watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation.
That's my wife, Cheryl, our oldest daughter, Ligaya. Then these two are twins. And then this is our youngest, Chris. This is Liam and Lisette.
Amen. Well, thank you, everybody.
I just have, Liam and Lisette, could you hand out those? If you don't get if you don't get the Adventist Frontiers magazine or our newsletters, I invite you now to sign up for that. My children are going to pass out a sign-up sheet, and you can sign up to get those updates or to become a part of our project. Now, not everybody can go and be a missionary in some other country. But we're all called to be missionaries, right? We're called to be missionaries first in our homes, and then in our work, and in our neighborhood. But I'm going to let my sister finish up the next part here. So this enables you to become a part of our project. And then my sister will share some things, more things that we can do as well. It's neat to be a team with my sister. I don't get this opportunity very often.
We're usually halfway around the world from each other, so this is such a treat to be together. My son sent me. How did you feel when whoops. Okay. Anyway, how did you feel when I said that each of us needs to reach 150 unreached people? Seems obtainable? It seems within the realm of possibility. Any other responses? How do you feel about that? To feel like you're responsible for 157 people learning the gospel so they can be in heaven.
I don't even know their languages.
You don't even know their languages. No kidding. So what can we do? For example, my son sent me a map of the top language spoken in every state in the United States other than English and Spanish. Do you know the top language besides English and Spanish that's spoken in Nebraska?
German.
German, good guess, but that's not it now. It probably was at one time. I'm about half German. Any other ideas? French. That is among the top 5, but it's not top. Any more guesses?
Spanish?
I thought so. I was going to say Spanish. That's the first language I encountered as a child, but no, it's besides English and Spanish. Bill said Chinese. Actually, Tagalog? No. Vietnamese. Vietnamese is the top language spoken in Nebraska besides English and Spanish. But Bill's not far off. Do you know the top language spoken in Kearney besides English and Spanish? is Chinese, right here in Kearney. The top language besides English and Spanish is Chinese, and much of China is completely unreached. Most Vietnamese are unreached. So that the top languages besides English and Spanish in Nebraska and in Kearney are among those unreached people groups, least reached. At least I'm not aware of a Chinese church here in Kearney. Is there one? Is there a Vietnamese church? No? Well, there's your mission field right there. Not only that, my uncle tells me there are Muslim refugees, Muslim students at Kearney, at the University of Nebraska, Kearney. In fact, well, before I steal my own thunder, God, in His wise plans, has made the advancement of His cause dependent upon the personal efforts of His people and upon their free will offerings. Often when we think of missions, we think of giving offerings because we think, well, I could never go. But you notice that looks like kind of a postscript? The main thing is personal efforts. Isn't that interesting? So God has a plan, and when you think of that many unreached people in the world, how can we reach them in our lifetime? I'm so thankful for this assurance. All God's biddings are enablings. Whatever is to be done at His command may be accomplished in His strength. And this quote gives me goosebumps. It's just like the strategic plan of God in heaven. His planning committee minutes just happened to drift to earth. And it says, if we were quick in discerning the opening providences of God, we should be able to see, can you guess what it's going to say? If we were quick in discerning God's opening providences, we should be able to see in the multiplied opportunities to reach many foreigners in America, a divinely appointed means of rapidly extending the third angel's message into all the nations of the earth. People sometimes ask me, so why are so many people coming to America? There are 104,000, okay, this was a couple of years ago, but it has been an average of 104,000 people coming from other countries per day. Most of them are temporary visitors, which means that if we reach them while they're here, while they're tourists, they could go back and spread the gospel with their people. In fact, God is turning the curses, this is not a spirit of prophecy quote, God, but the principle is there. God is turning the curses of political turmoil, famine, and religious persecution into blessings by using these things to bring the unreached people within the reach of the gospel message. Some people ask me, why are these people coming here? Well, they have various reasons in their minds, but God has a specific purpose that may be beyond what they have in mind. God's strategic plan to take the gospel to the world in this generation is for us to reach out to the refugees, asylees, immigrants, international visitors, and international students that He has brought right here to Kearney, right here to North America. So it's not, each of us can be missionaries. It says God in His providence has brought men to our very doors and thrust them, as it were, into our arms that they may learn the truth and do a work, look at this, a work we could not do among the men of other tongues. I could tell you story after story of how when we just kind of accidentally reached out to people of other cultures who are here from their own home countries. They went back and shared. There's a pastor in Chicago told me that he was giving an evangelistic series, and a man from India came, attended every meeting, was convicted of the message, baptized, and wanted to make sure he had his baptismal certificate and materials to take back, because he just happened to be the pastor of a 300-member non-denominational church in the mountains of India, and he wanted to take them the Adventist message. Amen? I think that pastor almost doubled his quota just with reaching one man. Amen? You never know when you reach one person, how many people that person can reach. Often people who don't look like leaders to us are leaders in their culture. My husband likes to tell me, and he is so good, he can walk into the room full of people that he has never met before, but who are from his culture, and within minutes he knows who the key leaders are. And he likes to tell me, it may be the old man sitting in the corner in rags with half his teeth gone, but when he says go, everybody jumps. And when he says no, nobody moves. Do you and I see that? I don't know how he does it. But when you reach one person who's influential in their culture, they can reach their people like we could never imagine. They can do a work we could not do in the regions beyond. My husband was invited to speak for a camp meeting in Thailand, which is a free country. He said, well, let's make it international. So we had people come from China, from Laos, from France, and from America. An older lady that's she's shorter than my youngest daughter, but she loves the Lord, and she's very matter-of-fact about it. And after the camp meeting, she said, can you take me to the bus station? I think, now that I have my U.S. citizenship, I think I can go back and visit my family. Sure, be happy to. It was pouring down rain, but she was determined to go. When she came back, she said, I found out my granddaughter's married, but she's having trouble getting pregnant. And I told her, God can help with that, and I can pray for you. But if you want me to pray for you, you better not be asking the shaman and the spirits to give you a child at the same time. You better, if you want to ask God, just ask God, and you better cut those strings off your arms that you think are protecting you from the outside spirits, and get rid of that, that spirit altar in your house. And if God gives you a child, you better take that child to church and go yourselves. Do you think the missionaries, well, that country doesn't give missionary visas. But if there were missionaries there, do you think they could say that? I know what would happen. They'd be given 48 hours to leave the country permanently. But she's grandma. So she's not bringing some foreign religion, she's helping her granddaughter out. Well, sure, Grandma. So they agreed, and Grandma prayed. Fast forward 2 months, we're back in the States. Granddaughter's pregnant. Fast forward 2 years, the whole extended family is attending church, and 3 young men in that family want to be pastors. Oh, gives me goosebumps. A work we could not do. Could I go over there and do that? Not in a million years. She can do it in one quick visit, there and back. They don't even have to go back. A Mongolian woman in Madison, Wisconsin, where we live. We didn't know about her, she didn't know about us. But when we moved, we were called to reach out to the Hmong refugees in Madison. And we usually do this church planting at a local church. We ask to use the worship, use the sanctuary in the afternoon, use the church in the afternoon. So she, the clerk of the church said, I'd like to write an article about your family. So she did, then brought a copy of the Northside News. They'd blown up our picture a quarter of a page. And I looked across the page, and there's an article about a Native American man who just turned 100. I thought, that's interesting. Little did I know that there was a Mongolian woman who was his caretaker. She never read the Northside News either until the neighbors brought a copy of the article. She looked across the page and saw, oh, there's an Asian man and his family, my husband, our family, and oh, he's a pastor of a Seventh-day Adventist church. It just so happens she had been watching 3ABN, learning lots of wonderful things and wanting to find out more about an Adventist church. She found one clear across town, hired a taxi once and never went back. It's a big church, probably got lost in the shuffle. But she saw, oh, these pastors, there's another Adventist church. Well, that's within walking distance. It's a good walk, but she said, I'm going to walk there. Well, we happened to be in another church that Sabbath, but she was persistent. She came back the next week, and we were there. We met her. Long story short, she became a Seventh-day Adventist. And the first impulse of the renewed heart is to bring others also to the Savior. Amen? Mm-hmm. So she called Mom back in Mongolia. Mom, you got to, that church you're going to, it's not right. You got to find an Adventist church. Wasn't long, Mom was telling her, oh, I went to the most wonderful cooking school. I'm learning how to cook all kinds of wonderful dishes I never dreamed of before. Next thing, I get an email from her. She says, do you know of any English-speaking churches in Germany? Because my brother is working in Germany, and he's attending an Adventist church there, because I told him he has to. But they speak German, and he doesn't understand German yet. He just understands English. So do you know of any English-speaking churches there? Here she is. She didn't go anywhere. She's reaching out to her people on 2 different continents, a work we could not do. So I would like to invite you. The mission field has come to Kearney. I would like to ask how many of you would be willing to pray that God will lead you to one person from another country who is open to learning more about Jesus. Would you be willing to just pray that God will lead you to someone who wants to know, who is open to learning about God? And I did this in another church, a small church in Wisconsin, and I asked them to stand. Well, everybody stood, but I didn't realize then that when the pastor's wife stood, she was thinking, well, yeah. And she was saying, well, yeah, Lord, but you know this isn't my thing. You know, I'm just not good with other languages or other cultures, but, you know, I'm willing, but until she met me. But she met me at camp meeting, and she said, when I prayed that God would lead me to someone, we were on a morning walk, and I met a Chinese lady. And then I realized there's a Chinese lady coming to church. I invited this lady to church, and God timed it so they both walked up to the church at the same time and got acquainted on the steps as they walked into church. And now she's coming in. So you never know what God will do when you ask Him to lead you to someone who's open to learning more about God. He sent them here for that purpose. And His biddings are enablings, even if you don't know what to say. There's a it's acquaintance that awakens sympathy, and sympathy is the spring of effective ministry. Angels are waiting to cooperate with all who will devise plans for souls who for whom Christ died may hear the glad tidings of salvation. So I'm eager to hear how God leads you to share the message of God's love and salvation with your international neighbors in Kearney. God bless.
I just want to segue on what she said. We had 2 Chinese young ladies come to our church in Vientiane, in Laos. One of them, not a Christian, but curious. The other one had studied in America and became a Christian here in America, and then went back. And there are so many resources. God has brought them here to meet you. And the language, the Chinese language itself, is a tool that tells the gospel. And I have resources for you, and I'm sure my sister does too. We have resources for you in English and Chinese, and in both that would help you reach them.
Thank you, Bill. And I have a little card that you can each take one, My Language, My Life. You can give it. It has resources in quite a few languages. But the best thing is personal friendship. You know the quote, Christ's method alone will give true success in reaching the people. He mingled among them, desiring their good, showed sympathy, ministered to their needs, won their confidence, and made them follow me. Those are the steps. Take them one by one. Don't jump ahead. Don't skip any rungs in the ladder. Wait till you have their confidence before you say, follow me to church. Take it step by step. Spend time with them doing things that they enjoy. Show you care. Meet any needs you can. Win their confidence. And when you sense that they have confidence in you, then prayerfully say, follow me in following Jesus. I'd like us to sing a little song. Lord, lay some soul upon my heart. This can be our prayer. And it's simple. I'll sing it once and then we can all sing it together. Join in if you know it. Lord, lay some soul upon my heart and love that soul through me. And may I humbly do my part to lead that soul to thee. Let's try it. Lord, lay some soul upon my heart and love that soul through me. And let me humbly do my part to lead that soul to thee. Let's pray. Dear Father in heaven, please lead us to a soul that you are already leading, to want to know you. Show us how, and thank you that you will. We love you. In Jesus' name.